Hi everybody, we are Mike and Brenda Baker, and today our title is Dealing with Impostor Syndrome in Remarriage. All right, let's get started.
All right, so dealing with imposter syndrome. What is imposter syndrome? Everybody, we were talking a couple videos ago, we were talking about narcissism and how I think that's a relatively new word. So imposter syndrome, I also think, is one that a lot of people are like, yeah, it's imposter syndrome. And I think that 90% of people who use the term don't know what it is. So what is imposter syndrome? It's when you don't feel qualified to speak on something. So if you feel like you're not a very good husband, not a very good wife, you are less likely to tell somebody else how to be a good husband or a good wife because you feel like an imposter. You don't feel qualified to stand up and say, oh, this is how you do it. Or, hey, this is a great idea, because you don't feel qualified to speak in that area. So really that leads us into our number one, which is, do you feel qualified to parent? Now, granted, we're talking about remarriage, but this directly affects that.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes, as a step parent. Okay, first of all, you don't know these kids. They didn't come from you. You didn't help create them. So it's really easy to feel as a step parent that you don't have the tools. And part of that is, it's not a new thing, but there hasn't been a lot of training on this sort of thing. So that's what we're actually trying to do here. And you can actually go to my blog, momsmixfamilyblender.com. The link will be below. There's lots of different topics on parenting and things like that will help you out, get you going, and also any of these videos. But it's really easy to feel unqualified. And what you need to understand is that from the beginning of time, from the very beginning of what transpired, God knew what was going to happen with your current spouse and their ex. He picked you. You wouldn't be in this situation with this new spouse in the remarriage if you weren't handpicked. So just understand that you are the perfect person to raise these stepkids. You're the perfect person to raise your kids, because from the very moment that they were created, you were picked. So you just have to really kind of take that up and just let that be your mantra, if you will.
Yeah.
It really needs to be your identity, because you are able. Yes, you're going to make mistakes, but it doesn't mean that you don't know what you're doing and that you're not qualified.
Yeah, so that kind of leads us. So the first one is, do you feel unqualified? But the second one, and this leads well into us, what are you doing to overcome your self-image?
Yeah.
All right. Today's culture does not tell you that you're a good person. Okay. Yeah. Now, one of my favorite quotes is, comparison is an addiction to failure. Okay. Now, where does comparison happen more than in a remarriage? Okay. You're comparing yourself to the ex-spouse. You're comparing yourself in parenting. And you're just like, oh, and I mean, it's overwhelming. And so what do? A lot of people, they give up. That's why recreation has become such a big thing now. That's how people escape from the responsibility of having to continue with self-image. So here's what I would tell you. Now, this goes for both men and women, is what are you doing to overcome your self-image? Are you reading? Yeah. I mean, if you like to read. There's a million books out there. If you like podcasts, listen to podcasts. If you like Audible, listen to audiobooks. I do all of the above. All right. And so if you're not doing something, then what you're doing is
nothing.
Zero. Nothing. Okay. You're not improving your situation. You're just complaining about it. All right. And I'll bet that maybe you're the ex, maybe you're dealing with an ex, but that's not productive. Zero is still zero. Zero is still no movement. All right. You've got to overcome your self-image. Because let me tell you something, your spouse and those kids are watching you.
Yeah.
What is the example you're setting? What is the precedent you're setting? Are you setting a precedent that says I can just be a whiny whatever? Or are you setting a precedent that says, no, we can overcome this, we can move forward, we can get past it, and we can do it together?
Right. Well, on the positive, one of the nice things about being at zero is you can only go up. Yeah. Right? So there are tons and tons, and maybe we should link a few different book suggestions down below to kind of get you started, give you some suggestions of where you might want to start thinking. Okay, it's not going to be an exhaustive list of all the things, but it might just really spark something within you that gives you that extra drive and motivation to move forward in just really being who you were created to be. And that's really all we're trying to do here. We want you and your spouse to be able to raise those darn kids to the best of your ability. And like I said before, you will make mistakes, and that's okay. Just be real with them, be honest about them, apologize if need be, and just move forward. And you can totally do this. So your self-image, though, like Mike said, is very important.
So that leads really well actually into number 3, which is be careful what advice you take. Now, for us in the beginning, we looked for fruit. Now, what do I mean by that? I'm not talking about a bowl of fruit. I'm talking about what kind of things were happening in people's lives that we wanted advice from. Were their kids, okay, for one, were their kids older? They had to be older, okay? Why? Because I wasn't qualified. They're not qualified to tell me how to raise my kids if their kids are the same age or younger.
Or if they don't have kids.
Or if they don't have kids. There's always those guys.
Sorry.
That applies to remarriage and marriage, though. But the point is are there older kids like what I'd like my kids to be like? Is their relationship with their spouse what I would like to have with my spouse? Is their life, not their stuff?
Yeah.
Their life, is their outlook the way I'd like mine to be? Are they more positive than I am? Fruit. Those are the fruits of their labors. All right. Now, I mean, we live in a world now where social media just runs everything. Okay. And if you want advice, you can sit down for 2 hours and get, 200 pieces of opposite advice.
Yeah.
I mean, and so when
Just go to Quora.
Yeah.
Ask a question.
Don't go there. So, so what do you do then? Well, you've got to be smart about it. If you're going to take advice from somebody you wouldn't normally take advice from, that doesn't mean you can't hear good things. I like listening to Gary Vee occasionally, even though I'm a Christian dude, and that's not the advice he's given, but I've got to be smart about what I listen to. Yeah, that makes sense. I totally agree with that. Nope, toss it. That doesn't make any sense at all. That's not going to work for my life. So fruit, it's all about fruit. What advice are you taking? Are they qualified to give it to you in this area you're looking for it? And is it going to benefit you? Can you implement it?
Right. And what Mike is kind of talking about here, that I just really want to drive home, is the fact that a lot of people who are on their first marriage want to give you a lot of advice that is going to be very bad advice, might end up with a call to CPS, might end you up back in court. So what we're trying to say is be smart about the advice you listen to. You do have to take into account what their fruit looks like, but you really need to be careful.
Best advice we can give you in feeling imposter syndrome is be you.
Yes.
God made you to be you and nobody else. And it's okay. You don't need to apologize for you. You need to be the best you can be.
One of the things that I always struggled in with the imposter syndrome is my best friend is one of the most amazing people I know. She's great with kids. She's good at all of these things that I really suck at, okay? And so I always compared myself to what she was doing and how she was parenting and how creative she was with her kids. And none of those things was I good at. I had to actually work pretty hard and read a lot of books and figure it out on how that was going to look like for me, because we don't have the same personality at all. Actually, we're pretty much opposites in our personality in most ways. And so I compared myself, and to the detriment of my self-image, but also to the detriment of our kids in some ways, because I thought that I wasn't the greatest. Our kids started saying, well, Aunt Jen would do this. You need to do this like Aunt Jen does. Well, I'm not Aunt Jen, okay? You don't live with her, so you don't even really know. We're there, 2 to 3 times a year because they live in a different state. And so that was something that I never took into consideration. And so just really be gentle with yourself, because you're probably doing a way better job than you think. It's hard to take on somebody else's kids. It's hard to be in a remarriage because there is a lot of baggage that other marriages do not have. And so just really see your wins, wouldn't you say?
So the big thing she's talking about there was, what was the difference? We had kids that were similar.
Sorry.
We had kids that were similar ages.
Yeah.
However, their marriage is a very, very good marriage, but it's a very successful first marriage. And there were things that just weren't understood between the two families because ours was a remarriage.
Right.
And although we were pushing for the same things for our kids, the dynamic of the other kids, of these kids, our kids, those kids, wasn't a factor in their house. And so now things are great now, okay? And they were then. And they worked through them and all of that. So we didn't spend this eternal place where we were comparing. They moved past that in the fact that we realized, okay, look, this is okay for your house, this is okay for our house, and we don't have to be the same.
And I guess I just didn't really understand that. I thought that I needed to be good at all these things just because I was a mom. Well, those aren't my things that I'm really good at. I mean, I learned to be okay at them. World's okayest mom ever in some ways, and then in other ways I really excelled with my kids. But it was just an added pressure that I put on myself. Okay, it was 100% me, and sometimes a little bit my kids, because I allowed them to compare me. But I was comparing me, so they were taking what I was doing, so it was my fault. Okay, so that's all we're saying here. Anything else?
Nope.
Okay, well, that concludes this session of dealing with imposter syndrome in remarriage. There will be some links below in the description that you can take, and hopefully they will help you. If you have any questions, please comment below, get your questions answered, and just let us help you as much as we can to be your very best in your remarriage. That's all for today. We'll talk to you again soon. Bye.